We will start with our seniors. First, Emma Reilly will tell us about why nobody's perfect.
This is probably the final competitive speech I'll ever give. And I'll let you guys in on a little secret. I have been writing and performing these speeches since my sophomore year of high school. I ultimately became so frustrated with my lack of a suitable topic that I had decided not to enter this competition today. I hit a wall, and I hit it so hard I almost became a permanent resident. So naturally, I called up my childhood best friend to complain about the situation, and she said, "Emma, you are such a perfectionist. Just write about something stupid, it doesn't matter." It is at this point, I would like to clarify, I do not think this competition is stupid. Judges, please rank me favorably. But nonetheless, her comment really stuck out to me. I was being a perfectionist. And you know what? I'm going to talk about it. So to start off, what even is perfectionism? Now, I know a couple of you are probably rolling your eyes at this, but bear with me. We've all been in job interviews and heard someone say, "Oh, what's my worst trait? I guess I'm a perfectionist." And it's kind of just like a coy compliment to themselves. Well, that's because culturally, we often view perfectionism as a positive. And that comes from the common misunderstanding that perfectionism is having high standards for yourself, or a lot of discipline over your work or your life. Sadly, no, that's not really the case. Perfectionism in its true form isn't about having high standards. It's about having impossible standards. And it's not really a behavior, it's a way of thinking about yourself. Take this competition, for example. If I just have high standards for myself and I don't win, I may be disappointed. But at the end of the day, I know that failure isn't a reflection of me as a person. We all win some, we all lose some. However, if I'm a perfectionist and I don't win, I would cry myself to sleep tonight, call myself a failure, and then probably never enter a public speaking competition ever again. And I know that sounds really harsh, but for a lot of people, that's truly their living reality. And most of them don't even recognize it as a problem. Psychologists have broken up maladaptive perfectionism into 3 different categories. First, self-oriented perfectionism, which is having excessively high standards for yourself. Next, socially prescribed perfectionism, which is the belief that you're being held to excessively high standards by society or by your peers. And thirdly, other-oriented perfectionism, which is having excessively high standards of others. Thomas Coran and Andrew Hill ran a study studying the rates of perfectionism from 1984 to 2016. And they found that over the past few decades, college students' rates of perfectionism have been steadily increasing. And throughout the last decade, they're the highest they've ever been, especially socially prescribed perfectionism. And sadly, this trend isn't unique to college students. A study by Andrew Hill again decided that when children reach adolescence, 25 to 30% of them are already maladaptive perfectionists. And unlike the cultural expectations of that word, it doesn't mean that students are becoming more accomplished. It just means we're getting sicker, sadder, and more obsessive. So at this point, you're probably wondering, what has caused this dramatic uptick in the rise of perfectionism? Well, first things first, we live in a society that prioritizes accomplishment above all else. When you meet a new person, how often is the first thing you're asked, where do you work? Where do you go to school? What do you study? And how many of you are a little embarrassed when the answer isn't as comparatively accomplished as you'd like it to be? Well, that makes sense because ever since we're little kids, we're taught that academic competition is at the core of who we are. Starting at ages 2 and 3, when certain parents will have their toddlers interview for prestigious preschools in hopes that one day they might be able to go to a school like Hamilton. When standardized testing, where you go to college and where you get an internship are placed on a pedestal, it teaches children to internalize being adverse to perceived mistakes, which in turn breeds perfectionism. Social media also plays a huge role in propagating perfectionism in the modern era. These days, LinkedIn alerts will let you know when every other kid in our year gets a prestigious banking job, and Instagram will tell you just how well liked you are compared to your friends. Social media gives us the constant pressure to share and appear to be perfect in order to be socially accepted. Influencers quite literally make a living based on selling stage pictures of perfect lives, perfect friends, perfect bodies to the rest of us average people. If that doesn't perpetuate self-prescribed perfectionism, I don't know what does. So at this point, you may be wondering, why is this trend so harmful? Well, at the end of the day, perfectionism isn't just some annoying tendency. It has a lot of very harmful consequences. Psychologists have linked maladaptive perfectionism to a whole host of real-life clinical issues. Most prominently, anxiety and depression, even when controlled for traits like neuroticism. And other studies have gone beyond that to link perfectionism to things like eating disorders, insomnia, social anxiety, and most tragic of them all, suicide. Anxiety, depression, and suicidal ideation are all more common in people under the age of 20 than they were a decade ago. And while I can't possibly say that's all attributed to the rise of perfectionism, the correlation between the two shouldn't be ignored. So what can we do? Well, first things first, we can stop treating mistakes like mortal sins. Failure is not a weakness, and mistakes are not a reflection of who you are. We need to have a little bit more compassion for ourselves and for others. Secondly, we can stop pushing kids and college students to be the best. Instead, like within the liberal arts philosophy, we should teach them to be well-rounded, to pursue things that they love, even if they aren't the best at it. And most importantly, that winning at any cost, especially the cost of your health or your mental well-being, isn't the goal. Instead, we should learn to find joy in mediocrity, in half-baked ideas, in things that we objectively aren't good at. Because at the end of the day, in the words of my childhood idol, Hannah Montana, everybody makes mistakes. Everybody has those days. Thank you.